Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to share 3 unsettling encounters with one of Japan's most famous urban legends, Hanako-san, the bathroom ghost. But before we dive into these stories, I need to be clear. What you're about to hear comes directly from witnesses, people who lived through something they can't quite explain. Each story is rooted in a real Japanese folklore belief that's haunted school children and office workers for decades. By the end of this video, I'll explain the cultural origins of Hanako-san and why bathrooms hold such supernatural significance in Japanese tradition. Stick around. You won't want to miss what happened when these people encountered her. Let me start with a story I heard from someone who worked as a night shift cleaner at a corporate office building in central Tokyo. Let's call her Yuki. She'd been doing this job for about 3 years. Nothing unusual, just routine cleaning in a 30-story office tower near Shibuya. The money was decent, the work was straightforward, and Yuki preferred working at night. Fewer people around meant fewer interruptions. But in March, something changed. Before I continue, let me explain Hanako-san briefly. In Japanese urban legend, Hanako-san is the ghost of a young girl who died in a school bathroom. The exact circumstances vary depending on who's telling the story. Some say she was a victim of wartime bombing. Others claim she was bullied and took her own life. And some versions describe her as simply dying in an accident. Regardless of her origin, the folklore is consistent. Hanako-san haunts the third-floor bathrooms of schools throughout Japan. Children knock on the stall door and chant her name 3 times. If she answers, something terrible happens. But Hanako-san isn't limited to schools. She appears in office bathrooms, train station restrooms, and anywhere people gather. She's almost always described as a young girl in a red dress or red skirt, pale-faced, with dark, hollow eyes. The belief is rooted in Japan's complex relationship with bathrooms as liminal spaces, places between the living and dead where spirits linger. Yuki began noticing something small at first. While cleaning the women's bathroom on the 15th floor, she'd hear the sound of running water in one of the stalls, always the middle one. When she'd investigate, the stall was empty, and the water would stop immediately. She told herself it was probably an old pipe or the water pressure adjusting. These things happen in old buildings. Then came the mirrors. She was cleaning the bathroom sinks one evening around 2 a.m. when she noticed something odd in the mirror's reflection. Behind her, in the reflection only, she saw a faint outline of someone standing in the corner. When she spun around, nothing was there. Just the empty bathroom, the beige tiles, the fluorescent hum of the lights. Yuki didn't tell anyone. She thought maybe she was tired, maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. 2 nights later, she was back on the same floor. This time, she heard the water running again, but this time in 2 stalls simultaneously. She checked all 3 stalls thoroughly, all empty, all dry. Yet the sound of water dripping continued for almost a minute after she'd stepped out of the stall. But the real detail that got to her was the bathroom door. When she'd entered the bathroom, she'd propped it open with a cleaning cart to ensure proper ventilation. But as she was finishing up, she noticed the door had silently closed behind her. Completely. The cart was still outside in the hallway. Someone, or something, had moved the door without making a sound. That's when Yuki felt it. A sudden cold spot right in the center of the bathroom, near the mirrors. The temperature dropped so dramatically that her breath became visible. She left immediately. 3 nights after that, Yuki brought a smartphone to record what was happening. She positioned it on the counter, aimed at the mirrors, and left the bathroom. From the hallway, she could hear water running inside. When she re-entered 15 minutes later, the phone had fallen into one of the sinks. It was soaking wet. The video file was corrupted, but not before capturing something. A faint, translucent figure in a red dress standing behind where Yuki had been working. The timestamp on the footage showed it appeared for exactly 7 seconds. Yuki never watched that video completely. She showed it to a coworker who immediately refused to look any further and told her to speak to someone about it. On the 7th night, always significant in Japanese folklore, Yuki decided she couldn't avoid the bathroom anymore. She had to finish her shift. Around 2:30 a.m., she entered that same bathroom on the 15th floor. This time, she was not alone. Standing in front of the mirrors was a child, a girl no more than 9 or 10 years old, wearing a faded red dress. Her skin was porcelain white, her eyes completely black. She was staring directly at the mirror, but Yuki could see her reflection clearly, too clearly. The girl's mouth opened slowly, impossibly wide, and she let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream. It was hollow, echoing, ancient. Yuki ran. She didn't finish her shift. She called her supervisor and never returned to that building. She quit her job the next morning. Here's where it gets worse. 3 weeks after she quit, Yuki started noticing strange things in her own home. Water would run in her bathroom sink at night, even though she lived alone. She'd see wet footprints on the tiles that appeared and disappeared. Once, she looked in her bathroom mirror and saw the same girl standing behind her, just for a moment. To this day, Yuki refuses to use certain bathrooms alone. She always brings someone with her. She's moved apartments twice, trying to escape whatever followed her home that night. And sometimes, at 2:30 a.m., she still hears the sound of running water from behind her bathroom door. Old office buildings often have aging plumbing systems that make strange noises. Water pressure fluctuations and settling pipes can sound remarkably human. Additionally, night shift workers are particularly susceptible to sleep deprivation and pareidolia, the human tendency to see faces and figures in shadows and reflections. The smartphone footage, when examined closely, could simply be an artifact of corrupted digital data, combined with the power of suggestion and Yuki's increasingly anxious state of mind. That said, Yuki was a rational person. She didn't believe in ghosts before this happened. But Hanako-san isn't just a modern office legend. The story of the bathroom ghost is deeply rooted in Japan's actual history. And one investigator's encounter with the original location of Hanako-san's haunting reveals something far more disturbing than any urban legend should. In Kyoto, there's an old elementary school that sits on the edge of the city, partially abandoned but still used for cultural events and school reunions. Let's call our witness Hiroshi. He's a paranormal researcher and historian who became obsessed with Hanako-san's origins after reading accounts from the 1980s. He believed the legend wasn't invented out of nowhere, that somewhere in Japan there had been a real Hanako, a real girl whose death had sparked the entire folklore phenomenon. In 2015, Hiroshi was granted permission to investigate the school during its annual autumn festival. The event was small, mostly elderly alumni and their families walking through nostalgic hallways. What many don't know is that Hanako-san legends intensified after World War II. Some accounts suggest she was a girl killed during the wartime bombings of Japanese cities. Others claim she was a student who died in a school accident, and her spirit became trapped because proper funeral rites weren't performed for her remains. In Japanese Buddhist tradition, a body must be properly cremated and the ashes scattered or enshrined for the spirit to find peace. If that doesn't happen, the spirit becomes restless, a yurei, an angry ghost with unfinished business. Bathrooms, in particular, were considered dangerous spaces because they were seen as thresholds between worlds, places where boundaries weakened. Hanako-san hauntings spiked in schools built on sites of old military hospitals, bomb shelters, or mass graves. Hiroshi spent most of the festival taking photographs and documenting the school's layout. The bathroom in question was on the 3rd floor, always the 3rd floor in the original stories. As the afternoon wore on and the festival wound down, Hiroshi decided to venture into that specific bathroom. He was alone by then. The hallways were nearly empty. The bathroom was exactly as he'd imagined it. Old white tiles, vintage porcelain, harsh fluorescent lighting. 3 stalls in a row of mirrors above old sinks. What struck him immediately was the temperature. Despite the mild autumn weather outside, the bathroom was ice cold. His breath misted visibly. Then he heard it. A child's voice, very faint, coming from inside one of the stalls. It sounded like whispering, but he couldn't make out words. Just the cadence of a child speaking softly to herself. Hiroshi approached the middle stall, always the middle one, according to legend, and knocked gently. "Hello?" he called. The whispering stopped immediately. Complete silence. When he pushed the door open, the stall was empty, but the water in the toilet was moving, swirling slowly, as if someone had just flushed it. More disturbing was what he saw on the tiled floor. Small, wet handprints. Child-sized handprints leading from inside the stall toward the sinks. They were fresh, still dripping. Hiroshi took photographs of the handprints. When he checked his camera's screen, the images were distorted, pixelated, and warped, but the wet marks were visible in each shot. By the time he stepped back, less than 2 minutes later, the handprints had disappeared, completely dry, gone. Hiroshi checked the school's schedule. No students had been in that bathroom. The only people present were adults attending the festival, and security had confirmed that no one had accessed the 3rd floor bathrooms during the time Hiroshi was there. He decided to stay after the festival ended. The school director, a kind, elderly woman named Mrs. Tanaka, allowed him to conduct a more thorough investigation. As evening fell and the building emptied, Hiroshi set up several cameras in the bathroom and monitored them from the hallway. At 6:47 p.m., something appeared on all 3 camera feeds simultaneously. A figure, child-shaped, wearing what looked like a school uniform from the 1940s or 1950s, moved across the bathroom mirror. It didn't walk, it drifted, and it was looking directly at the camera. For exactly 3 seconds, the figure's mouth opened wide, and every light in the bathroom exploded in a shower of sparks. The cameras went dark. When Hiroshi rushed back into the bathroom, the lights were out, but emergency lighting from the hallway cast a pale glow. And there, reflected in the darkened mirror, he saw her, the girl. She looked exactly as the legend described her, a child with a pale, angular face, dark, empty eyes, and a faded school uniform from decades past. But what made Hiroshi's blood freeze was her mouth. When she opened it, her jaw unhinged impossibly wide, wider than any human mouth should open, and a sound poured out. It wasn't a scream, it was the sound of air being drawn in, a vacuous, hungry sound, as if she were trying to pull something toward her, and Hiroshi felt it. He felt the pull, a force, like invisible hands gripping his chest, dragging him backward toward the mirror. He stumbled, caught himself against the sink, and ran. He didn't stop running until he was outside the school building, in the cool autumn air. Hiroshi made it out, but he never returned to investigate further. He published his findings cautiously, presenting the events as unexplained phenomena, rather than confirming Hanako-san's existence. But something important emerged from his research. School records from 1947 showed that a 9-year-old girl named Hanako Yamada had died in that school building under unclear circumstances. The official record was vague. It simply stated, "accidental death on school premises." Her body was never properly identified, and no cremation ceremony was ever formally recorded. Some believe that Hiroshi's investigation inadvertently acknowledged Hanako's presence, that by documenting her, he gave her a voice. The hauntings at that school have intensified since his visit. Historical schools, especially older buildings in Kyoto, often have temperature fluctuations due to poor insulation and aging infrastructure. Pareidolia, seeing faces in mirrors and reflections, is heightened by expectation and low lighting. The handprints could have been moisture from old pipes or residue that appeared to move due to changes in lighting. Digital corruption of photographs is common, and sudden electrical failures in aging buildings are not uncommon. Yet Hiroshi's documentation was meticulous. He was a trained observer, not prone to flights of fancy. So far, we've seen Hanako-san in her traditional habitats, school bathrooms and office buildings. But urban legends evolve, they adapt, and in a modern subway city like Fukuoka, Hanako-san has found new places to haunt. This final account comes from a train operator named Kenji, and it challenges everything we think we know about where Hanako-san can appear. Kenji had been operating the Fukuoka subway line for nearly 15 years. He was meticulous, professional, and had an excellent safety record. Every morning at 4:45 a.m., before the first passengers boarded, he'd do a complete walkthrough of his train, checking every car, every seat, every corner. It was routine. It was safe. Until one November morning in 2019, when routine became something far stranger. This is important to understand. Folklore doesn't stay frozen in time. Hanako-san, born from post-war trauma and school-based superstition, has evolved in the modern era. She now appears in places where people are vulnerable and alone. Bathrooms, yes, but also train cars late at night, empty shopping malls, and even online through certain video challenges. The legend has adapted to modern isolation. Where there's loneliness, there's potential for Hanako-san to manifest. In Japan's culture of collective shame and silent suffering, she's become a symbol of those who die alone, unwitnessed, unremarked upon. On this particular morning, Kenji noticed something unusual on car number 3. A single passenger was sitting in the middle section. A child, a girl in what looked like a school uniform from a past decade. She was perfectly still, staring straight ahead. Her skin was unusually pale. This was odd for 4:45 a.m. The train hadn't even begun its official route yet. How had she gotten on? Kenji approached her. "Excuse me, are you waiting for someone?" The girl didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge his presence. Kenji checked the security camera footage of that car from the previous evening. Nothing. No sign of anyone boarding or hiding. The camera feed from 10 p.m. the night before to 4:30 a.m. that morning was completely clean. No passengers, no staff, no one. Yet the girl was there. Kenji asked one of his colleagues, Tanaka, to speak to the girl while he observed. When Tanaka approached, the girl's head turned, very slowly, and she looked directly at him. But her eyes were different now, darker, empty. Tanaka immediately backed away and told Kenji they should call the police. But when they turned back to the seat, it was empty. The girl was gone. And the strangest detail? The seat where she'd been sitting was ice cold, despite the train car's heating being on all night. Kenji checked the security cameras again, frame by frame. The footage showed the girl vanishing between frames, not standing up and walking away, but simply ceasing to exist between 1 second and the next. For the next 3 nights, Kenji saw the girl again, always in car number 3, always in the same position, always at approximately the same time during his morning walkthrough. On the third night, he decided to remain calm and observe her more carefully. He sat down 3 rows in front of her and watched. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. The girl simply sat there, perfectly motionless, staring at something Kenji couldn't see. Then slowly, she turned her head toward him, and she smiled. A smile that was far too wide, too knowing, too old for a child's face. When Kenji blinked, she was gone. But he heard something, the sound of water running, echoing through the train car. Not the sound of the train's ventilation system. This was distinctly the sound of a faucet, of water pouring and dripping. The other passengers on later trains reported hearing it too. The maintenance team investigated and found nothing wrong with the plumbing. On the 4th night, Kenji made a decision. When he saw the girl again, he would try to communicate with her. He sat down directly across from her and spoke quietly. "What do you want? Why are you here?" The girl's mouth opened, and from her mouth came the sound of water, rushing, torrential water, as if an ocean were pouring out of her small body. The entire car filled with the sound. Other passengers screamed. Some ran toward the doors. And then, just as suddenly, the sound stopped. The girl was no longer a translucent apparition. She was solid, real. She stood up, walked directly toward Kenji, and looked at him with those ancient, empty eyes. Her uniform flickered. One moment it was a 1950s school dress, the next it was a modern one, then Victorian-era clothing, then something Kenji couldn't identify. Styles from different eras overlapping and shifting. She opened her mouth again, and she spoke in a voice that sounded like multiple voices layered on top of each other. "You see me. You acknowledge me. Thank you." And then she was gone. The train car was empty except for Kenji and the confused passengers. Kenji quit his job 3 days later. He told his supervisor he couldn't explain why, only that he couldn't return to that train. The girl, the manifestation of Hanako-san, or whatever she truly was, stopped appearing after that night. But Kenji never fully recovered. He now works a daytime office job, and he refuses to use the subway. Here's what troubles me most. Just last month, multiple passengers on that same Fukuoka subway line reported seeing a young girl in a school uniform sitting alone in car number 3. Different passengers, different times, and they all described the same pale skin, the same empty eyes, and the same sound. Water running, dripping, echoing through the car. Some say that by acknowledging Hanako-san, Kenji created a permanent gateway for her. Others believe she's now tethered to that specific train, doomed to ride the same route eternally, waiting for another person brave or foolish enough to see her and speak to her. Mass delusion is a documented phenomenon in Japan, particularly around urban legends like Hanako-san. Once a belief takes hold, people begin to see patterns, to find evidence where none exists. The water sounds could be from aging plumbing in the subway system. The apparition could have been a real person, a disturbed individual who found a way to hide on the train and then leave undetected, perhaps through maintenance areas unknown to most operators. The security footage, glitches, could be explained by equipment malfunctions or digital compression artifacts. Yet multiple independent witnesses reported the same details without having communicated with each other beforehand. Before we wrap up, let me explain the genuine cultural roots of Hanako-san that make these stories feel so unsettling. Hanako-san's legend likely emerged from Japan's traumatic post-World War II period. The war left countless unmarked graves, unidentified remains, and children who died in air raids without proper funeral rites. In Japanese Buddhist and Shinto tradition, a spirit cannot find peace unless the body is properly cremated and the ashes are respectfully enshrined or scattered. Those who died suddenly, violently, or without witnesses, their spirits were believed to become yurei, vengeful ghosts trapped between worlds. In Japanese spiritual belief, bathrooms hold a unique significance. They're spaces of transition where the body is cleansed, where vulnerability exists, where privacy is expected but never truly guaranteed. Bathrooms are also historically associated with death in Japanese culture. In old wooden homes, deaths often occurred in bathrooms due to poor ventilation and temperature extremes. This made bathrooms natural gathering places for restless spirits. The third floor appears constantly in Hanako-san legends. In Japanese numerology and architecture, the number 3 holds both protective and dangerous significance. Third floors were often where schools housed bathrooms, making them isolated and vulnerable spaces for a ghost's presence. Schools are institutions of collective identity in Japan. Students spend formative years surrounded by peers, teachers, and rigid social structures. Those who don't fit in, whether due to illness, disability, or social ostracism, can experience profound isolation within these walls. If such a child died, especially due to bullying or neglect, her ghost would represent the ultimate tragedy, a life cut short before it could truly begin, witnessed by many, but helped by none. In contemporary Japan, where loneliness and social isolation have become increasingly common, Hanako-san has evolved beyond school bathrooms. She now represents all those who suffer in silence, who exist in plain sight but go unseen. The subway passenger version of Hanako-san speaks to the isolation of urban life. People packed together yet profoundly alone, traveling the same routes daily without truly connecting with one another. These 3 stories share a common thread. They're not really about a supernatural girl in a bathroom. They're about witnessing, about seeing someone who's been invisible, acknowledging their existence and the profound consequences of that acknowledgement. In each account, Yuki's office tower, Hiroshi's research, Kenji's subway train, the hauntings escalated precisely when someone truly saw Hanako-san. Not glimpsed her in shadows or heard her in pipes, but genuinely witnessed her presence and acknowledged it as real. This reflects something deeply human about Japanese culture, the fear that one day, someone suffering in silence will finally be seen, and that seeing them might obligate us to help, to change, to acknowledge systemic failures that led to their suffering in the first place. What do you think happened in these 3 encounters? Was it genuine paranormal activity, mass delusion rooted in cultural belief, or something more complex? The power of legend to shape perception and reality. Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true ghost stories from across Asia.